Just before I start, there was some questions around the NFC TANZ. So if you just wave those over the front of an apple, it'll link up with a little notice will come up. Samsung is generally there. Right, so obviously there's a huge amount of change going on. It's been a while since I've seen sort of workload coming like that coming out of the NZCB and so many different parts of it. The E clause, or E3, is really kind of a battleground, or it feels like a battleground for us at the moment. Because we're not really, there is a lot of discrepancy in interpretation. It's tough for councils, tough for builders, tough for tiles, tough for designers. So I guess it would be interesting to know if we get back to while they're here, what issues you guys are seeing at the moment, particularly amongst your members of the master builders and certified builders. How are you getting much feedback from your members around failures and so forth? Scott?
Yeah, I think, thank you for having us anyway as well. Tiling and tiling failures has been a big problem in the industry for a long time, and as a builder myself, we've seen that. It's education, and I think someone summed it up before, the builders are like, well, that's not my role, it's for you tilers and waterproofers to do it. But you know, TJ taking a good step forward, and it's trying to educate everyone that the problem is everyone's problem. We can't pass it off to someone else and say that that's your problem. E3, it's a very difficult one, and you know, for everyone in the room, we all know it so well. I'm sure we've read it from the code back to front, and we all know it. But the problem is it's trying to interpret it. You know, with 67 BCAs around the country, they all have a different interpretation. The builders interpret it differently. The installers do it, the applicators do it, and it's trying to get everyone on the same page, I think. And then, you know, and how it crosses over to other like G4 ventilation and things like that. You know, we've got to take that into account as well. So, yeah. Yeah, sorry. So that's probably from the builder's background as well.
Yeah, it does affect. The builders it might be a tiled issue, but there's builders that are affected.
Yeah, and the issue is often around like, it was interesting coming in earlier and seeing putting up the details, because the details seem to be where a lot of the problem is, and people's ability to execute on the details. You know, there's a lot of people who have kind of lacked the training, just trying to get in there and make it work. Particularly in the past where people have been under pressure to get things done as quickly as possible. And so that's, I think it's the execution of the details where we're seeing the most failings. Yeah, junctions, penetrations, the usual stuff.
Yeah, look, it's actually a really good time for change too, while we're a little bit quiet, while the industry's a little bit quiet. It's much harder when it's busy to try and get these changes across, so it's quite a good time. Jeff? Obviously, the council generally end up as the backstop, the last man standing. How big an impact does, I guess, these tile failures have on the councils? How much of your resources are tied up in dealing with this sort of thing?
We've got one person working full-time doing investigations just on failures and complaints we're compiling for the LPB board or engineering disciplinaries or something along those lines. And we've just been told that we need another one full-time. There's 2 people full-time just on that issue. The claims is another thing. The amount of claims that we get, we believe are probably tip of the iceberg. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of failures are from work carried out during refurbishments that are not consented. We had a determination last year from MB which said a membrane tile wall in a shower is under Schedule 1, it's exempt work, doesn't need a building consent. So that's the sort of stuff that is probably one of those grey areas that you asked about. When we get the claims, it becomes a blame game. Now, I just probably say how many membrane applicators go under the floor and check the nogs are at 400 centimes for the substrate, because they're pointing at each other. A building consultant will say the membrane failed because the floor moved too much. The floor moved too much because the nogs were not at 400 centimes. And then the builder will say, well, the membrane applicator can't install their membrane unless they are happy with the substrate. So all of a sudden they're pointing at each other. So those are the sorts of things that we see in terms of that. Once you get to a claim, it gets really messy. And I think if you could cut it before that point by lifting the game, that's probably one of the things that we've always pushed. And we're the first ones to put our hands up and say we're not perfect in terms of the inspections. We're looking to lift our game in that sense. We're not perfect in terms of consistency across BCAs. We know that, we hear it every day. So that's where that great work that India are doing in terms of the guidance, documentation, the acceptable solution work. And I must just give a shout out to you for the amount of work you guys are going through with all the reform and everything else. It's big ups to you, because I don't know how you can do it and still manage to go home at night, and it's crazy. But yeah, well done.
Yeah, no, definitely. So we do see a lot of, I would say we see a lot of discrepancies between BCAs and that type of thing. How much education is available for your team to learn these sort of things, like when a new change comes out? Like obviously we've got a lot of changes coming up. How do you address the education required for that?
We start off, we have a training school when it first starts. It's a 6-week training school, and E3 is part of that. We limit the training at that point to just AS1. And knowing how to read specs and manufacturer's details. Because there's so many out there, you can't train the person into that. They've got to be able to know how to interpret what the specs say on site. And we also have regular product presentations come in. Not as regular as we would like, but if we probably stay current on that sort of stuff. I know it changes all the time. I was speaking to Sika today, saying if I could bring the team through their factory at Rosebank Road just to get a heads up of what's new and what they're doing out there.
Okay. How about for your members in the two associations? Obviously, it's just a flow of effect. We have change from the regulatory, and it comes down through the councils, and we go through to our builders and sub-trades. So how do you guys address the changes as they come through? And how will you look to prepare your members for the coming changes to LVP?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think E3, from a builder's perspective, has been something that hasn't been a spotlight for a long time. And it's great being here today and seeing some of the initiatives that are in place that we can, both organisations can hopefully take back to our members. I mean, we both have internal education programs that we run, webinars and things like that. And it's just upskilling our members as the builders to know that they're part of this process as well. You know, you go over it again, but the poor applicator has to deal with what they've been given. And if the builders aren't doing a good job, then we've failed from the start. So yeah, I mean, we do have internal training programs, but like I said, E3 is probably not one of the big things at the moment, but definitely, you know, for what TANZ have got and some other things that are happening, it's really good for us to be able to know this and go back to our members and educate them as well.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah, we're quite aligned in the fact that we've got our own internal education processes. I think a lot of the informal stuff is actually where the things happen within the regions, and the teams getting together and discussing these things as well, and sharing the ideas and sharing best practices. So for as much as we can put the stuff out there, I think it's talking to people that have been dealing with the issues on the ground and sharing best practices probably where the education happens best.
Yeah, so between the two organisations, what's your membership count sit at? How much for each have you got between the two? 70%?
Yeah, we've got around 2,300 business members at the moment.
Yeah, that's great. Channel 4 education, isn't it? We talk about, always talk about E3 not being a big, I guess, focus. And that seems to be the case through the building industry. Yet we look at it as, we see the damage that it's doing and that the dollar value involved, and it's actually huge. It's never really gained the same, I guess, importance as what we saw in E2. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, that's a good question again. It's probably because it's always been pointed, and I'm sorry, they're in the room, it's always been pointed at the tilers and the applicators as their issue. It hasn't been identified enough. I mean, I've been lucky enough, or I'm lucky enough to deal with a lot of leaky homes in Wellington in 2007, 8, and 9, and you could see the damage that was done and the mould, and I'm not going to pretend to say that the mould, the black mould that you, the name of it, but you know, it was always blamed on E2, and E2 was upgraded to deal with external moisture, but we didn't target the internal moisture enough. And yeah, so I think, I mean, look, good builders do know what E3 is, and good builders do something about it and try and help the process. But yeah, the problem I think with the industry in general is too many people. It's not my job. You know, that's your job. You've got to deal with it. So, you know, hopefully with the license, it'll give the applicator more power to be able to go back to the builder or the designer and say that's not right. It's not going to work. You know, how do we fix this?
Yeah. No, exactly, because you're going to have, I guess, an example this morning where we talked about how things like water stops and all those sort of things are seen as an option, whereas head flashing in the exterior isn't. So I guess hopefully LVP will bring that change in attitude.
I think that'll be one of the big improvements to come, will be the change in attitude and probably the strength for the people in this room to be able to stand up and say, hang on a second, it's my licence, it's on the line here. It needs to be done the best way I know how. We're going to push back so we need to pass it.
Yeah, look, there's always a bit of a fuss whenever a new licence scheme, but I was around when the original LVPs come around, and it was the same rules then. We know there's going to be no other licence when the date came in, and everyone was. You know, it's just part of that change process that we go through. Chief, with LVP, I know you've got changes coming up around how you around producer statements and that you mentioned earlier. Is that driven by the LVP change, or is that just as well as the LVP change?
It's actually separate to that. It's more about just what we see out there in terms of compliance and the level of compliance needed. So with the changes, for example, we'll be wanting a photo of a wet film gauge in action from certain surfaces because we're not there when you put it on. We want a photo of the bomb breaker before that's covered over, the water stop, all those sorts of things that aren't there when an inspector can't see. We're going to want evidence of that, and hence the reason why we're going to lift that QA game. Now, if you want to provide a producer statement, it's probably going to be negated a bit by the licensing regime, but currently we allow a author of a producer statement on our register to carry out their own inspection. So their QA has got to be lifted even higher. So we've got a checklist of items that they must provide, including a bunch of photo evidence with that. And that will include the flood testing, time-stamped flood testing. There's a whole bunch of things there that will also cover off more than just the bathroom areas, the wet area. The substrate structure as well needs to be picked up. So there's a whole raft of things that we believe will add to the inspection quality. And the licensing will just be a mechanism that kind of makes them responsible to do that. I think that's probably the key.
Yeah, there'll be some big changes. Oh, as far as attitudes, I think, as much as anything when it's their own personal LVPs for long. It's always challenging around the producer statements because correct me if I'm wrong, but the producer statement basically says that it's still ordered to specifications in the building code. But if they don't know what the building code is, then it's a lot harder. So if they don't know about water stops and they're signed off, it's not code compliant, but it's not also checked as well. So
Yeah, I think the producer statements, PS3 producer statement is more about the building consent, complying with the building consent. Which is different. And my feedback to MB when this licensing submission starts is the record of works that a LPB provides at the end of the job only states that they did the work or carried out the work. I would love to see that go one step further and add a line in compliance with the building consent, or something there that ties it to quality.
yeah, absolutely. So going forward with these changes, we've got LVPs coming in, QA systems coming in. I guess something for TANZ to look at is how we manage the QA of our members. You know, how are we looking to make sure that they're at a level that is appropriate for TANZ and so forth. Do you guys have any thoughts around how that can be implemented within your own organisations?
Yeah,
It's a tricky one because
it is a tricky one, but we've got, and I keep saying it, so, we've got people in the group who are leading from the front by doing that already, getting their staff and their contractors up to scratch, and I think we need to, look at what TANZ guide and the other best practice guidelines are out there for membrane and ensure that our builders are knowledgeable about that. I think when the LVP, the whole process is education, so that could be something that MB do, or when the brands do with code words, and the code words when they come out, they could be more on E3 as well, because the builders have to do those as part of their LVP regulations as well. So and I hate to go back and pick on designers, but I think a lot of it stems from that, where you show the example, which is poor design, and the builder has to do it that way because that's what's in the plans, and the applicator has to do that, and the tiler has to do that. So, educating from the start for the designers as well.
Yeah, I think that's so important because we're basically giving the person with the least experience, the least knowledge, the keys to the place really, aren't we? They're designing without even seeing it or knowing it. The builders on site would know, the tilers would know, they're not the ones making decisions.
Big ups to you for your program you were showing us before, because that would be really good for designers to go through that and see how that works, and everyone, the builders and the tilers and all trades. And we keep saying builders and tilers, but it's the plumbers and the shower installers and everyone who contributes to this.
And it's ongoing, the education is the big part, and we're kind of pretty keen to see licensing tied to education. My time going through my apprenticeship, there's not a great deal around understanding risk and kind of dealing with these compliance matters and quality assurance, and I think it's ensuring that as people come out of their time and move into a license class, that those kind of things are trained. We certainly have a part to play in it, and I think there's a part to play in assessing people's capabilities in those areas as well.
I do see Grant Ford smiling every time QA comes up over there, so that's good. So I guess it would be good to get some questions, and anyone got any questions for us? So this morning, I'll just go talk to a little bit about what Richard talked about with some of the changes around sort of splash areas and that sort of thing, and sort of more guidance around that. I kind of see that as a huge thing for it. We're looking to put a lot of emphasis in areas like showers and that sort of thing. But we can't apply that over areas like kitchens, which are different level of risk. Like we talked about, with dishwashers got the same safety zone as what a shower is. So how much sort of feedback have you had from your members around that E3 and kitchens versus showers and waterproofing and bathroom versus other areas?
I don't think I've had anything specific around it. I think I go to Dan's here, it's often deferred to quality subtrades that are coming through and taking care of these areas for us.
Yeah.
Tilers, rain, fire, flooring, anything like that, it's taking care of a lot of these issues for us. So we're probably not seeing so much. There's obviously an awareness of it, and maybe it is on us to do a bit more education around it. But maybe direct feedback relating to this themselves.
Probably one that springs to mind was when, because a lot of houses now have the laundry in the garage, and put down garage carpet and things like that, and some of the BCAs interpret that as not being suitable. So having to have a hard flooring around the laundry area within a certain distance, and how the builder copes with that, deals with that. There's things that no one can pick up probably until later in the project is taps and kitchens. We've got all these fancy taps where people pull it out and they can spray it every which way. And then the Port Council comes along with the final sign-off and actually said that doesn't comply. And that was maybe a selection that was done further down the track by the homeowner and things like that. So there's sort of areas that crop up from time to time. It's like anything, it's like this light. So people will kick and scream about it and get angry, but I think most things have been done for the right reasons. We're seeing the issues, and it's probably our job, all us as people who are committed and here today to educate other people on why these things are happening. We're not just doing it for the sake of doing it. It's to try and save money, it's to try and prevent issues, in the end, to help the consumer.
Yeah. Jeff, have you found much sort of confusion around that? I kind of wonder, because there is quite a bit of noise around that, and I do wonder whether it's because it's being handled at the pre-consent stage rather than perhaps the building stage. But is there much noise around that side of things?
There is, particularly around the multi-unit designs, and we've seen in Auckland which is 60 to 70% of the new dwellings now, where they have an island kitchen and they have carpet on the other side, same with retirement homes. So we generally look at those from a risk-based point of view, and a lot of them we will allow that carpet come on, particularly when you've got a wider bench and the sink is on the kitchen side. Whereas if it was a narrower bench and you had one of those pull-out hose taps, which is never drawn on the plan, we may insist on having splash protection on the dining side of the bench. So it is a risk-based decision.
It's actually quite nice to hear that risk-based sort of consenting process, because I guess that's one thing we do look for from our councils is we can get tied up in addressing these lower risk areas and then sacrifice it for the areas we should be concentrating in. And I think that's probably sums up E3 really, is we're focusing on a lot of other things, but we need to try and focus on that now. Very good. Any other questions? All good. Anything you'd like to sort of sum up about E3 and the changes that you see coming?
Where do you want me to start? I work in the Albert Street office on Thursdays, and I asked 3 of the building inspectors that were in the office yesterday, what are the issues that you've seen on waterproof membranes recently? And this is their top 5 hit list. Bath cradles placed on top of a membrane and then fixed through the membrane into the floor. Someone caught an apprentice trying to pop the balloon that we're using to flood test the shower room with his hammer. He didn't want to get his shoes and his boots wet. A deck membrane being tested, it was a 50 square metre deck and they were flooding it and nearly collapsed the building. What else we got here? Membrane, actually this is quite a common one. Membranes emulsifying because they put the test on before it's cured. And the other one is just the moisture content of the substrate being too wet when they've even if they put a cement fibre board on top of a ply or a stream board, if the stream or the ply has been sopping wet, then it eventually works its way through and separates that membrane layer.
Yeah, those are the technicalities that we can only really address with training. Waiting the correct amount of time after the membrane's gone down or the screw's gone down is just so critical, but it can get pushed to try and they can advance those before they should, which leads to issues. It must be an interesting ride, an inspector in Auckland at the moment.
And I want to finish on a positive note though. There are some pretty good, it looks a shame to cover it, membranes out there when you turn up. It's artwork. Some of it is really well done. And we can't take away from those people. They're the ones that I think we need to reward with that less oversight. And artisan is a perfect way of doing that.
Yeah, and that only becomes more obvious when you get these artists and what good looks like. So.
I'll probably just finish. Again, applauding everyone in here because you're all here to better the industry. Brendan and the work that you've done, Steve, it's fantastic to see. Didn't know what I'd expect today coming here, but I'll go back and rave about it, to be honest. It's really good and good educational stuff, but we can't just walk away and go, that's great. It's all learning from it and passing that on to our teams, your staff, or the people you work with. I think we need to get out of that it's not my job attitude. It's not productive, it causes trouble, and I think someone's example before where it was $100 that the tiler just wasn't doing it for $100 is getting out of that mentality. And Scotty said it before, I think it should stem from apprenticeships as well, education more at that stage. But we've all got a part to play, and I think this is great, collaboration and working together.
I've gone on with the collaboration piece. I think we all need to be working together better as associations and on the ground and actually on site, talking to one another and sharing best practices. And again, we reiterate the education piece. I think licensing is going to be really important for the waterproofing, and I think it's a really good recognition of the importance of it. I've had personal experience of seeing the water come through the ceiling in my own home as a result of the waterproofing failing, and I think the 45,000 I had is really bang on the money for what it was, and in fact the insurers won't step up and come in there as well. So giving this confidence to the consumers around the performance of people who are licensed is great, and I think it's a real opportunity for those who take it seriously.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, look, I think mine's again the collaboration. We're not going to do this as one part of the sector. We're not going to do it as TANZ on their own. We're not going to do it as municipalities on their own. But all the suppliers on their own. But if we all draw a line in the sand and say, right, this is best practice. This is what we're going to follow from now on. Then we can fix this. It's not that we're getting it 90% wrong. We're getting it 10% wrong. But unfortunately, that 10% is really crucial. So I guess, keeping that conversations going, keeping it front of mind, keeping working together with councils and MB and all the great work they're doing. And look, I guarantee we can sort this out. And for me, it's been about a 4-year project. So I guess we could get done in the next couple of years and we're in a much better place with licences and changes to regulations and clear standards, then it's fantastic. Thanks, Tim. Great to be here.